Hi, this is George Alger, and welcome to today's segment of Our Ventura TV. Today we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence, and our guest expert is Dr. Karen Semien-McBride, who has a doctorate in business administration and a doctorate in psychology. And for those who know and love her, she is also called Dr. Karen. Welcome, Dr. Karen. And what is emotional intelligence?
Hello, George. Thank you for having me. Emotional intelligence. I define emotional intelligence this way. It is a sense of understanding not so much our micro emotions of you being happy, sad, or mad, but us understanding our micro emotions of the things that kind of create those feelings of passive aggressive behavior, maybe those that give people the silent treatment. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today when we talk about emotional intelligence. But in the book text part of it, it really is us understanding the framework of how we manage our emotions. How do we communicate and utilizing our emotions, knowing that we are human and 90% of our brain are emotional. So it really is understanding and utilizing a way to help us communicate better, where our emotions don't always get in the way, but then we're able to utilize them in a more authentic manner.
Wow, so there's a lot to unpack here, but let's start with, let's say something that's the most practical. So I like what you're talking about when you say, refer to communication. How could a person use emotional intelligence to improve their communications?
Great question. And some people may hear emotional intelligence and they've heard it probably known as EI or EQ. So that also is a terminology and I'll throw around a little bit today so people could understand from EI to EQ, which means the same thing. But how do we utilize emotional intelligence is that the first in the framework of emotional intelligence is a personal framework and then there's a social framework. If I focus just on the personal framework of emotional intelligence, there are three sectors of that. One is self-awareness, the other is self-regulation, and the third is self-motivation or just motivation. And so we say, well, how do I utilize it? We need to be aware. It's really just kind of understanding when our emotions are getting the best of us in a situation. And we've all been there, especially when I talked about the micro emotion, right? We've all been in that space where someone has said something and it creates a reaction from us. And we go, whoa, how do you manage that? How do I change that into something that could be more positive? And so that's what emotional intelligence is about. So self-awareness will be that first one. It's really saying, how am I being aware when I'm feeling something that somebody says something and I want to react? And how do I utilize emotional intelligence to help me regulate that so I can be effective in how I communicate versus reacting on how I communicate? So the first one I would say is just being aware of your emotions, finding more time to hear yourself speak, understand what's coming out and why, because that's where the emotion part comes from, right?
Very good. In fact, this is such, I mean, this is such a compelling topic by itself. I wonder if you could even offer a tip right now where someone could either raise their self-awareness or at least not react so strongly to something which they might regret later.
Absolutely. And so if you look at awareness, it really becomes taking more time at saying, you know what, I'm not going to take everything personal. We take a lot. I mean, again, it's like 80% of the stuff that is said by people, we take it in a personal connection because we're human and because our brains are emotional. That's what happens. But if we were to say, you know what, if someone says, I really don't like red and you're wearing red today, I can take that in a very negative space, right? I can take that and be very upset because now you don't like my red dress. Versus I could say, you know, he doesn't like red. I like red. That's his opinion. I can decide not to have an effect. It can affect me, right? I can decide that. Or I can decide to utilize an emotion that can cause a conflict. And so it really becomes about taking the time to pay attention to what people are saying and deciding if you're going to take it in an emotional way or take it personal, or you're going to decide that I'm going to just regulate what's being said and really determine how can I be effective in this conversation, or maybe not. You can decide to walk away from it.
Mm.
And I, what's the term? People always say that, just be like a duck and let it roll off your back. Kind of, sort of, but I really want people to be more engaged in understanding why they have these emotional connections to things. So then that it helps us better understand us, which in turn helps us better understand individuals or people we come in contact with.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, this seems wonderful to just try to turn a negative into a positive. But I'm wondering if there's a circumstance where a person reacts so quickly and suddenly, let's say even automatically. All right. So it's like it seems like they're bypassing self-awareness, whether it's myself or someone else. But it's like
Right.
I can't even believe this came out of my mouth so fast, and I regret it before I'm done saying it, or something like that. But is
Right.
there a tip that could help someone to even, I don't know, regulate themselves in that way?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. People will first say, well, I'm just a hothead, and that's just why I pop off so quickly. But you can regulate it. I mean, we all can decide if we want to regulate our emotions or not. And I recommend as much as often as we can is to do some form of meditation, even some form of just practicing breathing and knowing that everything doesn't have to have a response right away. I share with my clients that, just because an email comes across your desk doesn't mean you got to hit the send button. I mean, I always say there's always an opportunity for pause. So I say pause is kind of where the strategy lies. If you
Mm.
take a pause, if you can just say, the next time somebody says something, I'm going to just take a good pause before I decide how I'm going to react to this. And could you imagine if the world just did that? If everybody, George, we came across just said, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to take a 3 second, I'm going to take a 5 second pause to just decide that I can have enough information in my mind to say, I want to be effective in my response. So I'm going to just take a pause. And no matter what people say, no, it's not possible. It is very possible because still our brains can be processed down. We have the control. It's just what we decide to do is the issue.
Wow, very good. Yeah, and I want to sort of put a underscore under how this could not only benefit each person's individual life, but truly in their business environment and would have repercussions out in the world. So, we're actually starting to run out of time here, and I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to cover the main points that you wanted to fit into our little time. Is there another tip or something else you wanted to fit in here?
Absolutely. So if we just think about those three sectors that I mentioned earlier, so when you think about emotional intelligence, EQ or EI, you're thinking about self-awareness, self-regulation, and then self-motivation. There's so much information out there about, of course, those three, but understanding that that's what it means, and the focusing in on how do we regulate, how do we aware, how do we be aware, how do we regulate, and how do we self motivate ourselves to just be in a better space. And so I just encourage everyone to just focus on, let's just say, let's do the pause. Let that be the tip of the day. Pause before reacting. How about that?
All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Karen. I'm going to wrap things up here. This is George Alger signing off for this segment of Our Ventura TV. Until we meet again.